No, I don't. The choice, yeah. Here.
Okay, then I don't have it. Do you want to just watch it?
The whole world will know. This is oh, West Coast violence up in here.
West Coast. Alright.
Third Coast, West Coast.
Was that Texas?
Gulf Coast. Mostly Texas.
Wait, is that?
I thought the third coast was the coast of the Great Lakes.
No, down in Texas, they say so.
That's third and a half coast.
I know it's Michigan one.
Here's the-
It represents some of
It's the
a
33rd.
state that's not here.
Everybody have an awesome day.
Thank you.
on. Let me get a timer.
At the phone, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. You both have it?
Yeah.
Alright, cool. Anybody not ready? Contention 1 is partnerships. Uncertainty over the direction of the U.S. space program undermines the industrial base, destroying tech competitiveness and innovation. Slater. And 11, uncertainty remains over the direction that NASA will take to capture America's ability to launch crews into space, causing ripple effects throughout the industrial base, causing workforce instability, result in the permanent loss of unique human capital experience. Now may be undercover on and off against planes for the subtles. Placement have led to uncertainty, let skilled personnel go because of lack of clear direction, failure to state program. This makes signals that industry make long-term investments. U.S. military relies on the space industrial base to keep our nation's key elements within the industry to depend on civil government programs for survival. The government spending pulls back the industrial base will shrink accordingly. This leaves the U.S. incapable of building national security assets in the future. The world will see U.S. for leadership in our space program, cutting exploration risks, our technical leadership overall, and only costs can reduce launch costs by billions and catalyze public-private partnerships. All counter plans are descriptive of a status quo failure must, and allowing cost of private performance partnership between the government and private businesses. Experiment resulted in the first U.S. launch vehicle. This launch is the only U.S. launch vehicle that is competitive in international marketplace and bring launch dominance back to the United States. The central tenet of costs that public-private partnerships leverage private capital to supplement government dollars using services more cost-effectively, more rapidly. SpaceX developed for Falcon 9 for a fraction of the cost of what it costs. That's a $4 billion SpaceX developed for approximately $300 million. The plan solves competition through commercial crew. Is key for certain 12 commercial crews critical to bring competition. Government launch services currently. UAE launches the vast majority of payloads whose prices have risen steeply in the recent years. Launch costs. Given rising competition is key to bringing prices down for making U.S. industry competitive. International market and lower launch costs facilitate further space exploration that prevents inevitable resource wars. The alternative is extinction. Collins and Artino intend the major source of international friction has always been unequal access to resources. As the population grows, industrial activity grows exponentially. Resource wars become impossible to stop. It's become increasingly scarce. Alternative access to resources on space to facilitate world peace, expanding population, and decline in natural resources. The foremost threat to national security, acknowledging its feasibility is the surest way of ending the threat of resource sources. Resources are limited to those on Earth, and the resource sources are inescapable. Resource sources of space eliminates the need for resource responsibility, feasibility, low-cost space travel. To understand resource sources are clearly bullish. Achievement depends on low space travel costs and rising launch costs and aging technology. To the U.S. military launch capability, Norris and 12 U.S. missiles overcome rising launch costs and aging propulsion systems to maintain its global lead. We need newer engines to enable more robust access to space. We need to pay a huge financial premium for success. The military is entirely dependent on our space assets. Lack of launch capability will destroy it. Pellerin and the 12 space capabilities have become integral to all military operations. GPS, military satellite communications, missile warning, general Shelton said GPS signal is very weak. It's not difficult to jam for the Air Force satellite effort space launch. It's really foundational cost finally. We have to take action, reduce the cost action, and use commercial services. Now, hegemony is sustainable and key to prevent multiple scenarios of accidents, nuclear war, and extinction. It's also an impact filter for all other impacts. Retrenchment fails. Brooks, Eikenberry, and Wolford 13. There's little evidence that American focus on the country's balance becomes overextended, gets dragged under unnecessary war. U.S. commitments to reduce competition, act as a check against rivals, maintain an open world economy, make it easier for the U.S. to secure cooperation, combating global threats without major budget costs to the country. Can afford the cost. There's no evidence the countries are banded together in an anti-American line system. Unlike past century months, the U.S. is geographically isolated, far less threatening, face no contiguous great power rivals. Not only is the U.S. so far ahead militarily, security guarantees given the leverage to prevent allies from giving military check rivals to U.S. leadership. We're prompting balancing. We don't really expect examples, especially during Bush. No major power trying to balance for argument. Retrenchment. The U.S. will accelerate its own decline. Historical evidence is thin. Superpowers lost their leadership because other major balance and prospect that's on in the cards today. Satisfied no relationship between military expenditures and economic decline. Iraq was not an inevitable consequence of pursuing U.S. current strategy. Continuing the current strategy no way condemns the U.S. to more wars likely consider how the country after Vietnam waged the Cold War with proxies and limited intervention. The current strategy reduces dangerous conflict. U.S. deter states with aspiration to regional hegemony. With Washington got out of East Asia, Japan, and South Korea, expand their military capabilities and go nuclear, which provoked a destabilizing reaction in China. During the Cold War, both South Korea and Taiwan tried to obtain nuclear weapons. The only thing that stopped them was the U.S. So the U.S. to leave the Middle East, Israel, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia might intensify security limits. Regional insecurity could reduce cascades of nuclear proliferation, and such as the Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan build nuclear forces. Regional competitors might then see nuclear arsenals. Things that shaken when multiple nuclear rivals with less robust arsenals. The number of nuclear powers increases the probability of illicit transfer, rational decisions, accidents, unforeseen crises. Goes up. The current strategy acts as a hedge against merchants with regional hedge upon the U.S. is contended for regional hegemony and to balance it. The U.S. will need to maintain its military capacity. The country's military dominance undergirds its economic leadership in order to counter threats such as terrorism, climate change, pandemics. States have to work together. Cooperation is hard to combine regions where chaos reigns and flourishes. Where leaders can anticipate lasting stability. With American leaders who choose retrenchment, they'd be running a massive experiment to test how the world would work without an engagement. Part of the results could be disasters, and every credible measure of study shows that violence is down because of everything that's consistent with the hedge democracy. Liberal trade still only a question of sustaining the current dynamics, preventing shocks to the system. Pinker and 11. Violence has been declined for thousands of years. Today we may be living the most peaceful in existence of our species. Look at the numbers. Shows over the course of history, humankind has been blessed with 6 major declines of violence. With pacifications, investigations show about 15% of people in preceded eras died violently compared to 3% of the citizens in the earliest second with civilizations. European countries saw 10 to 50-fold decline rates of homicide people, increasingly controlled their impulse to turn to humanitarian revolution, enlightenment, the abolition of judicial torture, fourth progressive from major interstate wars, centuries ago, great powers will almost war countries to initiate 2 or 3 new wars, every non-nuclear develop safe stop fighting each other as well. The growth of democracy, trade, and international organizations, statistical evidence just reduce the likelihood of conflict since the peak of the Cold War in 70s and 80s. Organized conflict of all kinds have declined. The rate of documented direct effects from political violence in the past decade is unprecedented. Few hundreds of a percentage, when the post-war era seen the cascades of rights revolution. Violence is often reframed as a problem to be solved. Our studies are the most comprehensive. They have for the bigger picture of structural violence surface. 11. Microscope is enormous, ranging from prehistory, wars, crime, torture, abuse of women and children, cruelty to animals, and breath is central because violence in all these domains has declined sharply. Students are familiar with the narrow side, but if you have a step back to look at the whole picture, scholars simply deny the good news. One must draw on the vast array of sources, and Pinker does so, covering anthropology, archaeology, biology, history, political science, psychology, and sociology. He selected only these sources that support his claims. His knowledge holds up very well. I was ready to catch him, second that there are not of major causes that trend to reveal a decline in the frequency of war. Pinker's argument holds up. The burden is now on those who believe that violence has not declined to establish their case, and only deterrence is an empirically verifiable solution to war. More and further strong evidence deterrence affects the external factors on the decision to go where it's missing link between the war and peace equation. Principal wars in the 20th century. Every case the aggressor made a rational calculation. The war would be on. Hitler believed that France would not go to war with him. Calculation North Korea and attack New States attack in Kuwait were the operation that completed in the matter of days. All principal wars in the 20th century were preceded by double deterrence. Absent the aggressor believed that they had military force to prevail. Other evidence seems to support historical analysis. Peloponnesian War, World War I, Hannibal's War, World War II. Each war could have been prevented by an achievable deterrence. Each occurred in the absence of such a deterrence. Game theory suggests that offer further support the strategy. The core simple basic deterrence strategy influencing behavior between the sexes of game. Theoretic word corrects regarding relation to what assumes the importance of deterrence for exercise suggests that deterrence matters level. Deterrence can find visual, but the study concluded that more than 50 years conflict is no situation which decision-making model phase, substantial distance out of military action, and yet attack neither. No studies that human behavior and cognitive psychology increasingly shown that certain perspectives, decision-makers, and influence the level of risk that they might be willing to undertake. The word non-democratic regime pose credible military threat. Deterrence becomes crucial. Thus, the plan in the United States federal government should substantially increase its commercial, crew and cargo, transportation, infrastructure investment in the United States. Contention 2 is the ISS. We're now entirely dependent on Russia for access to space, but recent rocket failures with the Soyuz is unreliable and will force abandonment of the ISS. Down to 11 astronauts may abandon the ISS last week. Russian launch accident defense nuclear flying comes after NASA's final space shuttle flight. No one's aboard to fix equipment. Break time September 22nd. Launch of the next crew has been delayed indefinitely. Commercial crew is the only dependable means of access to ISS. Chow in 12. The delay of the launch of ISS because damaged Russian space capsule. ISS is critical need commercially. Both vehicles Soyuz damage box pressure test of space agency is now completely relying on Russia. It's crucial to fund the development of these new vehicles since launch in space flight. The Congress provides inadequate funding for the commercial crew. More funding is needed to kickstart the fledgling program. The largest agency needs an alternative means of carrying astronauts into space. Lack of access to ISS fuels American scientific leadership is building up now, but will be destroyed. Time from 2015. Hauser and John. 9 for the U.S. Allows the ISS to expire in 2015. Field negative international perception. The U.S. gave village reliability and later at the U.S. is likely to suffer a leadership role. Largest technical project undertaken not to extend the ISS operations significantly impair the U.S. ability to develop and lead the program. Result unprecedented retrenchment. U.S. is a critical international beacon of scientific diplomacy. Hurricane and 10 new scientific diplomacy is emerging. We've seen the waning effect is hard soft. Smart time sorry for emphasis on scientific diplomacy. U.S. is currently the world's major scientific center. Not only does the U.S. employ the most scientists, most research areas, it holds the most money, produces the most publications, home to many world's top research university sciences, offer tangible items such as ideas, sample funding, weapon and machinery, which can only be handled through cooperation and try or die. Extinction is inevitable without scientific exchange. We're now working on the direction that we only have direction of impacts on our natural ecosystem. Single person would take a large collective effort for problems such as climate change, overpopulation, disease, food, water, and security war, concerted efforts and world collaboration values, integrated science such as transparency, vigorous and creative informative based support, effective international relations, practice easily, with support at political level, provide soft policy route to other policy dialogues, and scientific diplomacy, checks escalation of conflicts, royal society, instead of having 10 war of perfect zone, food shortage, scarce water, insufficient resources, threat and unleash of cross-border conflicts, mass migration, size will be political adjustment, challenge panel, international issues, public statements, oceans, implication of vortification, the issue not security, cooperation between scientists and help facilitate political negotiations. Mark that negotiations on the Royal Society card.
Sure. Ready to go?
Yeah.
Card that says uncertainty hurts the space industry. It's from
card. Yeah.
It's from 2011.
Sure.
Do you have any evidence about how the space industry is doing that's like kind of recent?
We can provide an UAC if
also,
you want.
the impact of the
evidence
space
post-states
industrial base is linear because every time we reject contracts and we provide more uncertainty, that leads to more workers being laid off and the industry stagnating even more, which means that that just provides a
so the biggest
argument.
It's a contracting style internal link.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
What some of your evidence refers to an acronym COTS. What is this?
Commercial Orbital Transportation System.
And is that what the AF does, or is it similar to what the AF does?
Plantex, yes, correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
so your Collins and Artino evidence is like there's resources on Earth, we're all going to fight over them. Why wouldn't we fight in space?
Our evidence indicates since space is infinite, we could go to a lot more places. We have a lot more opportunities.
So countries,
for resources.
what about countries that cannot
As
access space resources as well as the U.S.?
It's a question of having a perception of having a plethora of resources in space that decreases the need for conflict as countries feel less boxed in, less pressured to get those resources in the first place.
What type of transportation infrastructure does the plan build? Okay, I don't really know what commercial crew is.
Sure, rockets to space.
Okay, thanks. why would hedge decline get rid of the international liberal order? Your pinker evidence indicates that hegemony has built up a style of world governance that prevents conflict. Where's the reverse causal
claim?
claim?
World Fifth evidence indicates that a collapse will lead to transition wars. Countries would fight against each other in the status quo, obviously competing ideological systems as well between the multiple
It also makes
actors
the
in the
warrant that
international
hegemony
arena.
provides a certain type of stability which is not present sans hegemony, which means that we can't have international cooperation and negotiations without that prior
A lot of the
stability.
things that
Can you
Pinker cites
explain
are
why a
propped up by
country?
hegemony
Can you
in the
explain
status
why a
quo.
country would ever calculate to disrupt the liberal economic international order?
Our evidence
And what
indicates that when they go to conflict, they wouldn't have economic interdependence and trade in the first place. The decline of hegemony.
Your pinker evidence indicates that that's been going on for hundreds of years.
Yes, that's coincidentally with the U.S. Increase in hegemony. We could read more evidence that it has spiked when the U.S.
Your
had
pinker
hegemony
evidence
in the first
speaks to the fact that violence was much more prevalent during the pre-civilized period. What was the pre-civilized period?
We would indicate around like 2,000 years ago, before, or more than that, probably before we had
not necessarily chronologically, but how did we
civilizations.
define it? How does he speak to what is considered pre-civilization?
Let's see, the pinker evidence, I believe he actually cites like the earliest state, so before we had like
So the
coalescing
state
populations.
became the beginning of civilization.
Sure.
Okay. Your science diplomacy evidence speaks to the protection of natural ecosystems. What are these?
Our evidence indicates things natural. What do you mean by natural? Natural ecosystem.
I'm asking you.
I understand. It indicates things like, I guess, plants and animals.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, the order is 5 off, partnership, then ISS.
Well, isn't there a new case flow at the top? Okay, fine.
And the first 4 off are on paper, so I'm gonna hand you the flash drive when I get to the pass you.
Okay.
I don't know if y'all want to take prep for this, but Keenan, can you please make that a case argument on a separate sheet?
Okay, sure.
3 seconds used.
3
Are we
seconds.
calling the first one partnership?
Yeah.
So 6 off and then the page.
But you're gonna need a.
Oh, so
Oh
you want-
yeah,
you
6
want a
off
new- a
referring
new
to the
sheet.
new case
Okay.
flow. Yeah, new case flow. Okay, that's fine.
And cases in what is the order, you said?
Partnership and ISS.
Yeah.
So Keenan, you'll just flip over here.
Pardon?
You'll flip the paper over here.
Sure.
Just because you said the first 4 on paper, right?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. That'd be great. Thank you.
Alright, real big though.
So the first case flow is inherency.
Woo!
Just getting 1950s up in here. Sneak preview of that one.
Hey, can I get the flash when you two are done with it?
In addition
Oh,
to 2
well,
seconds of prep
He's
use.
not giving us a flash
Yeah.
drive until he
Yeah,
does.
do you wanna-
Oh, well, I'll start with it
Where's-
then, and I'll
where's
give
the-
it to
Sneaky,
you.
yeah.
See, where is the flash
Be
drive?
less trust.
It's in your hand.
No, I put it on another flash drive. I'll just put it on this
It's my
one.
favorite flash drive ever. Oh no. Do you have
It's
it?
somewhere around here. Oh, it's
Okay.
right here.
Yeah.
So,
Aw, it's got a cute bow.
Can I get some? Oh wait. You know what? The stuff I need is off this flash drive.
Yeah.
Just start your speech.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
ridiculous.
This is no one.
It's now 11 off.
okay. Is anyone not ready?
First off is topicality transportation infrastructure excludes vehicles. EA and 12 transportation infrastructure includes only infrastructure that covers building construction excludes vehicles and voting for limits they load 100 different vehicle modules including boats for coast guard and operation for cargo transport that excludes explosive bands because the vehicles and multiple uses. Also granted they ignore the world infrastructure and the resolution we radically different topics. Next off is mega cities, new transportation investment and fuels development of mega cities. They ignore all causes. EIU and 9. This every ignores transportation and single budget branch out the transportation to progress for spending mega city and ancient global economy network of those cities and is ignored administration probably at all levels of administration. And that's more over the past couple of decades, they've barely been taken to be the major cause of problem, the lack of money, and most frequently maintained a scenario of transportation problem to revitalize infrastructure and mega cities destroy the water cycle that caused extinction. GNC and 12, the water cycle is one of the most important sources of the planet Earth for protecting human survival. Aquifers have been depleted for rapid growth in mega cities, surging population, groundwater fast and can be replenished and lead to major disruption of water cycle and elimination of the water cycle consequence of overrunning water sources. Next off is the Canada Plan. Text that the United States federal government should engage the contract compliance review process for construction of commercial crew and cargo transportation infrastructure if and only if the relevant contractors are found to meet federal equal opportunity objective. The United States federal government should substantially increase its commercial crew and cargo transportation infrastructure investment in the United States, and lack of contract compliance troops in the United States means that federal laws are supporting employment discrimination. The Canada Plan solve FHODA and 4 the problem of administration agencies circle the contract compliance and non-assuring contracts and non-terminated areas referred to non-compliance that there's non-compliance and equal opportunity contract compliance and contract compliance that objective that have been applied directly to non-compliance and direct objective of FHODA assistant ICA contract compliance and solution to compliance and with the goal is objective in the different assistant expert knowledge of contract and the rising contract compliance reviews. And here's a solvency advocate. Review must come before the Madeline 11. The must review companies before they receive conflict. Government should ensure all companies are in conflict with EU 1120 246 before they receive a lucrative government contract by using data. See 5% of contractors and obligation. You have an obligation to reject employment discrimination. Jellison 13. The radical advice increasing Black American and Jack's long recession communities should address employment discrimination. Many states support employees discriminated in the speeds of physical employment discrimination. Devastating Black communities are born into poverty. Lift all boys that serve by challenging employment discrimination. All are going to ensure that personal practices are inclusive as possible and discrimination is important. Next off is the critique. The affirmative infrastructure to attempt to distance humanity from nature, intent, humanizes to build up an infrastructure that enables civilization. Humans are able to change the way and interact with the world, focusing on technology to enable civilization, held collective with social protection of the environment. Human infrastructure is multiple human activity from the rest of the environment and solution, not physical but psychological infrastructure solution. It can only come with human industries, ability, green ability, practice, and change the fundamental races. They have the ability to function under a false system of humanity separate from the rest of nature, and their assumption is pure environmental dualism. The result is ecocide and extinction. Dark Mountain 9. The myth of nature tells us to be apart from the world and began as a part of some culture in which it is rampantly subdued, and the different part of the world and different evidence in regard are solved with different definition, different terms civilizations separated from the myth of nature and grim fear that because our cubers attempt to sever the endangered prostitute or something and different world that have existed and mammals are 75% of the world's fish off or birds collapse. Humanity can do more than actual crossing. Earth can replace a glimpse of violence cannot be driven as we are already still part of nature. We've already thought about the impacts and activities part of nature in different creation of different reality of our situation to the situation to political agreement and human technological genius, and we need to accelerate mobility because it makes us more sustainable and more capable of effectively limiting life on Earth because we can survive on giant bubbles, and cast off from life to bubble. The civilization is destructive of life and built upon burning forests, beam trawling, ocean forests, diamiting reefs, hollowing mountains, and wasting soil. And the alternative is to reject the 1AC environmental dualism that eliminates the concept of the environment and solves destruction of the planet. Row 96 is as if we all agreed in this something life to support the system. All the roots are dead. The separation of organs and supporting the environment and direction organic and inorganic parts to attribute the organizing of principle of life because attempt different parts of organs that people produce. The world separate important organic and inorganic science and construction and different parts of inorganic taxonomy and private right to departmentalization of global civilization or the organs that are subdued within life important when everything else is unimportant. Earth has traditionally been within environment. What is subdued the answer is alive and incentive organisms and biodiversity while plant and supernating are classified in different parts of the environment can be really exploiting running ideology organisms that are safeguarded with anything else. So the current planning concepts with current ingenuity life within the preserved concept of the environment vanishes the concept encompasses the world and Earth is the first species are second and because in the same pain when they're poisoned and people are not poisoned and different pain of an organism in a way when they're died apart under part of the organism. Next off is the plutonium. They said the legislative branch won't fund plutonium 238 production now, but space politics in 11 appropriate have not decided the administration to embarrass for 50 billion of D for production of 230 with 230 production and possibly the United States and you have missions and the link is the U.S. must produce a plutonium 238 to increase space exploration. NRC in 9 since the U.S. space program has relied on the invention of 238 in the existence since the time supplemented by the pressure from Russia. However, Russia and facility have shut down and the subsequent affairs in the United States will be able to our space for subsequent mission and that's able to have mission limited decision a short supply consideration are not able to have a present resupply to 38 kilo in the United States without our existing reactors, and plutonium production increases the risk of nuclear accident, mitigates solvency insurance case gain, and 3, by dramatically reducing numbers of nuclear launch in the U.S. and NASA reduces the chances of an accident, and NASA expanded on the focus of nuclear power is a danger on political and what's nuclear disaster. American people in Chernobyl in the sky and the part of to have nuclear power in space expand upon inherent growth and expected growth, and now on the inherency flow, commercial space is strong, and Obama funded their plan that solves the NASA in 422. Today's test markets and NASA's plan were able to have American companies and supply chains and aerospace and press model presented budget for next year that ensures NASA's commercial space initiative. The desk paves way for a demonstration mission. The reason why NASA's commercial group is working with commercial development capabilities to launch, and companies are using PPVs for CO2s allowed. Obama's budget solves the average space recorder in 427. NASA has been completely cultivating partnership and NASA's transporting companies the Dragon 10 transport crew and cargo and Bolden Parades, and Obama representing budget ensures space exploration critical part of the commercial space initiative. Now on partnerships, the economy is improving. Now consensus of experts is over 328. The growth appears to be solved. Strong housing property and is hitting within consumer spending is growth for gold tax and raised for core gas. And new Fed report proves AP and 317 strengthening housing property and auto sell growth across the U.S. and being really good is weakness in recovery, and they can't solve the economy. Obamacare and the trade deficit.
No, go to the impact.
Okay. There is no causal relationship between the economy and conflict. Best study proves that Brenton and Yulfer and 11. These and the growth that causes political stability of empirical analysis and does not support it. In the first statistical study of the relative vigorous analysis of the argument relationship between economic growth and stability, not uniform conventional wasn't, and these are explained why presented in field and regime failure and empirics prove no war.
No transition wars.
Okay.
Next
hedge. No transition wars. McDonald and Parent and 11. Based on the historical record, if U.S. should be able to return not signal weakness holding on to expensive commitments and larger geopolitical role and hegemonic powers, finding each and relevant and final one hegemon having a pivotal role in empirical record, including Anglo-American transition, would not without record, without confirmation of returns, will be able to have unstable position, immense and forward diplomacy would have clashes. And now on the ISS flow, science diplomacy doesn't translate into concrete policies. Coupled in 11 to policy for science is illustrated within climate negotiation, national interest, and broader rejected SDUs that are invisible within because science are unfortunately poor communication and the policy government and diplomacy is relevant because policy is esoteric and exotic because science and is complex and impenetrable and raising a question about subsidy eyes closed open the combination of starting a dinner party and major criticals exist because jobs aren't joined up. These matters political bureaucratic aim the science policy have underdevelopment and insecurity and plan leads to co-op with China and India Friedman 11 American leadership and calling promoting the space Jefferson and by James Open China and our lunar landings market lunar landings and China relations are bad. They steal our tech turning and closer relation cause opportunities for China's Chinese military modernization and the idea for Chinese space into this controversial market hospital and causes extinction often too with a few additional states at a proliferation would be rapid and those seizing at any point would probably preemptive nuclear war.
What's the status of the counter on the game?
Conditional.
Okay, let's talk about your megacities decided. The EIU evidence indicates there's congestion in places like London and the status quo. How does the plan building rockets reduce congestion in London?
You don't reduce congestion in London, but you fuel the creation of megacities in the United States.
How?
By creating centers of commerce where
like
we
NASA
launch.
Doesn't already exist. We don't already have launch sites.
Oh, well, I mean, if we already had substantial launch sites, then there would be no point to pass the affirmative. You substantially increase.
A misunderstanding of the affirmative. Now,
by increasing space traffic, you fuel the creation of megacities.
I want to read you a line from your Madland evidence in your counterplan. The federal acquisition regulation requires that before awarding supply and service contracts over $100 million, like the AF, contracting officers must work with the OFCCP to screen companies for what you require. I don't understand how you have a counterplan.
Can I take this one, Keen?
Sure.
So here's the sort of complex nature of it. The contract compliance review process as it exists is a flow chart. We examine, do you meet equal opportunity? Sure. Yes, if so, you pass. If no, did you make a good effort to do so? Which includes advertising about minority rights, and then you pass. The counterplan text is written very particularly to say that they will only do the plan if they meet the original equal opportunity. So in the status quo, those contract compliance reviews allow companies to just get out of discrimination by doing good faith effort, but the counterplan mandates fair employment.
Okay, I understand that.
Very specific distinction.
Critique. What is environmental dualism?
It's thinking of civilization as separated from nature. I think this is pretty apparent in cross-sex when you have descriptions of civilization was created at a certain point, and we have a distinction between human life and non-human
So what does the
life.
alternative do about this?
We eliminate the concept of a difference between nature and
So how do we act in that world?
society.
How do policies differ, I guess?
We can still act in a world where we are part of nature. It does not preclude, like...
I understand that, but how do
things.
policies change? Do policies change at all?
We probably would stop exploiting the environment in a way that would risk oil spills. We would probably stop our dark matter evidence sites dynamiting coral reefs, trawling ocean floors, things like that.
The alternative of floating tank? No. Okay, the plutonium dissad, your link evidence is from 2009. Since all of then, we've obviously funded things like Constellation. How do you still have an impact to the dissad?
We haven't massively increased space exploration. Our NRC evidence
was like 10 times.
Clearly, the affirmative substantially increases the use of these CCVs.
I'd say it's a linear risk.
It's a linear risk. So, what is the brink? I guess do we know a brink in which plutonium production increases so much that we have a nuclear accident? It seems like we've been
but if the plan
will continue for our nuclear weapons in the first place and modernizing them.
Like we've said, it's a linear risk. But if the plan actually does increase launches to the level it does, then it would.
All right, we'll take some time.
Fold the paper. It's classic, but it works.
One day code. I'm going right now. I'll let you know. Noted.
It's called H2AC Vigilance Time.
Yeah, my computer's just having a little trouble with the flash drive, but I think it'll work itself.
Oh, okay. I can use a different one if you're having it.
Not fair. Jackie's on that. How's Jackie doing?
Wait, is it just called Anthro 2AC?
No, it's called
Okay.
I actually was just going to answer Andrew.
Hi, Jackie.
That's all you need to answer, right?
I'm so happy. I'm like, is Jackie magical?
Jackie's in the room.
Okay.
Hold on a sec.
Keenan, do you have a color of pen that is not black? Yeah, somewhere. Also, you also want to this flash drive.
Yeah.
Did you actually?
We're like, I think this is an 8-minute speech, not a 10-minute one.
Thanks.
If you're okay with 07s.
I'm gonna use the actual timer. Here you go.
Do you need another flash drive?
No, I actually got it up. Keenan's getting them.
Oh, okay. So the order is inherency, partnerships advantage, ISS advantage, T, the megacities dissad, the plutonium dissad, the condition counterplan, and EK.
Just in case, can I have a couple more pieces of paper?
Yeah, we have tons.
Ooh, I need one color, OCD.
Oh, sorry.
I'm actually going to take one more second of prep.
I knew it.
Is it because?
We have 847 left.
847?
Yeah.
Causation or correlation?
Okay. Is everybody ready?
Yep.
Cool. Current current commercial crew contracts are underfunded and uncertainty of the status quo. Full funding is key to get the program back on track and encourage competition. Clark in 11:30 NASA administrates about continuing congressional bills listen to funding the agency's national commercial crew program. Congress is going to work with the White House body requested funding for commercial crew programs for lots of use to agency spending less than half the money it said it needed for 2013. The agency has had tough time selling commercial crew transportation technology, but money capital can't believe losing segment even if Congress passes spending bill with additional commercial crew funding. It's not like the program would receive a budget near the White House request because the commercial crew budget for the next 6 months fiscal year 23 was less than 50% of the mob administration proposed to make any boost to the budget for spending for the second half of fiscal year 23 will have to go beyond the White House budget request just to meet the bank level. National anticipated earlier this year. Lawmakers push NASA to select one company. NASA fought back saying multiple companies should continue working Christian competition lowering costs. That means that the budget evidence they read is not relevant because it won't get through Congress. It also hasn't been funded. Just the president's request played and told the budget's not set. And so this is the president's request, which then goes to Congress. Members of Congress have said that the budget is not satisfactory. Now the case debate the economy or warrants are not relevant because our evidence is about the aerospace industrial base. Their evidence is about housing, which means it's not relevant. We just have to believe the aerospace industry is uncertainty and the statistical charts later evidence indicates it is because there is uncertainty over commercial crew. Now the economy evidence is relevant because we didn't read an economy impact. Now hegemony caused transition towards IBW evidence indicates that we power back and move clean to hegemony. Their evidence is not so in the most recent studies that IBW in 13 indicates now the ISS advantage scientific diplomacy solves all conflicts. Exact evidence indicates that when we have scientific exchange with other countries, we can de-escalate conflicts that previously would have gone nuclear and escalated because they will listen to us because we have other things to cooperate over. Now the next turn they read. First of all, he reads 2 lines of every card here in his 1 and C, which means you should hold me to a pretty low threshold for answering this. Now cooperation is high now on other issues, which should take up. I think also we don't cooperate with China on the ISS, which means it's pretty nonsensical argument. Also proliferation will be slow walls and 3 nuclear weapons until they have spread across slowly across the world. Now the pace is not a good change with short-term transformation. Nuclear weapon not notice they are likely to allow to the Russians to do business in the United States works, but some efforts to keep countries from doing also hegemony and hegemony solves the terminal impact anyway. Now topicality when commercial crew facilitates the transportation of cargo and personnel to the ISS, and commercial crew is transportation infrastructure. CSTM the commercial crew provides resilience to our nation to space transportation infrastructure, preventing losses of space assets when single issue fields, and we meet roads, hydrogens, and 11 infrastructure on Earth transportation utilities. In the case of space, roads are the vehicles that travel to space, and counterpation TIs rail transport, transit ports, aviation space, and Virginia 12 for the transportation partnerships focus on all modes of transportation, including rail transit, marine aviation space, and railway projects. Their interpretation just inserts words into resolution, does specify type of TI. I prefer contextual evidence over gut checks. Also is key to innovation. Exploring the bounds of TI is critical to education, turning the same boring ages are debated around. That's key. The ability to innovate, supportable skill that facilitates growth. The alternative is extinction. Also better dissect and you got all the space side files from last year and coordinate and this year's core generics. Also evaluate the reasonability of community interpretations. Force and arbitrary about now. Obviously we don't link to their grammar argument because we meet this evidence says that we are infrastructure, and the plain text checks down the megacities says that there's zero link to this. Says that cross X is pretty devastating on this question. We do something that goes to space, and their link evidence is about things that go on the ground to cities, i.e. HSR, etc., not the plan. Now HSR also makes this completely non-unique because we're doing things like increasing freight rail and HSR in the status quo. And agriculture runoff makes water pollution inevitable. Tolman in 95, according to the USAP, agriculture runoff is one of the number 1 source of pollution. 90% river streams, lakes, analysis shows 50% of reduction subsidies would decrease chemical use by 70%, fertilizer by 14%. Now the plutonium does that. This is not unique. The evidence is from 2011. Now these now some type of current plutonium emissions that there is no unique link funded other major things since the budget evidence that they run a case also proves this. Also the Constellation and major programs not indicate massive space programs. Now the Inquisitor 126, the U.S. military is working on solutions to mass of dead satellites. Pentagon's currently working on space orbit that will harvest and use dead satellites. Today's satellites not being built, modified, or prepared in space. Therefore, to enable architecture that can be used for first on orbit satellites to work that requires us to create new technology, new capabilities. They're hoping to launch their first demonstration mission in about 2 years. They can touch the intended non-functional cooperating satellite, creating all new space system. Plutonium development is also inevitable because other countries because the private sector and other countries will do it, and accidental launches will not escalate. Kiss 11 and defeat the accidental unauthorized launching of a single missile, even if it's highly probable it's not likely to bring about a full-scale nuclear war. When that said, hasn't sent for it, we seem very small probability of very limited nuclear action with limited authorization of retaliation. Now the counterplan conditions, counterplans are illegitimate. 1 is infinitely aggressive. There are an infinite number of conditions they can place on space, and 2 conditional. The counterplan creates 3 different worlds, and they 1 and C say yes, say no, and minor modifications that makes it impossible to generate often. So just kick it at one world, stick with the other. Also jacks ground together. So also the case we give them link and uniqueness to a disset, also running as a disset solves their often some permutation to the counterplan. The counterplan is definition the plan plus off doesn't have to be resolved before the colon. Now the plans Webster's and 2K the phrase preceding the colon to with the cost when the core represents real business sentences and should imply an expedition of a recommended course of action, not a definitive course of action. American Heritage Dictionary now used to express probability and doesn't separate immediacy. Online plain text English Dictionary now was also determined after reflection. Now permutation to do both, and their evidence is A from 2004 about transportation employment requirements means the structures have changed since then. Also it's about state transportation agencies. The plan is done through NASA. The employment process is different. It doesn't apply to our we've read specific evidence from the past year that the commercial crew contracts are sound. They already have been allocated, not just not funded, which means they don't have a unique impact. Also commercial crew cells may benefit better, more equitable contracting structure than their evidence discussed. Also conditionalities about move C2AC means that we can't generate a cohesive strategy. Also contradictions are an independent reason to reject the team because we can't be forced to the 2AC to double turn itself with jacks. Afghan, you counter interpretation. 1 conditional advocacy solves your offense. Now the K. framework the affirmative should get too much in a world of feeling which the plan happens. The role of the judge in the academic term which presents the best policy option. That's best. A subpoints value and reps versus one C means the app. Can't win. B teaches us about policy implications. That's good for education. Teaches us cost benefit analysis and decision making. C bad methodology doesn't disprove the get actors the plan evaluate the policy board the form method epistemology. First is wrong. Only to see the political drivers in two cases. Not that we engage in epistemological debate, but suppose that this long tab little the most important ones acts will lead us in contempt for data status itself fall. The award to first problem solve is not necessary about advocate the solving nightmarish realities on firm to the plan on competitive parts. The alternative access to scientific data is a core benchmark for good policy. Good data is key to effective political engagement. Risk and there remains a critical data for scientific data available to just policies of recommendation to policy making not data driven rather generalizing other information citation issues only subject to critical data for policy making media based on objective measurable outcomes subject to measure highly questionable the exclusive source of evaluation quantification to be the lead issue in addressing all questions. Suppose that means that the alternative causes serial policy failure and the AF does now anthropocentrism is utterly inevitable. It's ingrained in our political and social structures. No one will transition away just because the alternative does now. Default to utilitarianism, each side is simply invaluable, commencing 96, but I can say 1 or 2 theories of price, such as only by showing when I cannot claim the taste, saving 2 makes up for the loss of 1, the loss of 2 is not outweighed by the loss of 1, which is trying to continue to have with some direction to think it's save as many price losses as possible, so you can do not simply outweigh the compensation for the loss of 1, the size that the size that the price let's have a good reason to save as many as I can. Now turn human domination is key to prevent the universe from destroying itself. Human progress leads to new technology that can stop chaos and cosmos obvious. There's nervous because our impact is universal. That seems also Earth also they've conceded a get off the rock internal link getting 1 AC, which means that is a dissat to the alternative as well. So the way we can resolve their impacts on human domination is key to space travel and colonization, nanotechnology that solves and subsumes their impacts. In 2001, the speech about powerful frames should we can rock from one spirit to another by improving our skills. We be better able to challenge the be planning macro engineering project testing humanity's ability to transform the service of the earth. Nanotechnology will be able to enable us to manufacture any material. This enables us to eradicate age problems such as scarcity, poverty. We will travel to the moon, planets, asteroids, and new exotic forms of energy. And B, ideas of human inequality of animal equality cause human extinction and ability to use animals for food and labor means annihilation of our species. Epstein in 2001. The hatred is inherent in the very notion of animal rights. We must leave to the humans free to overrun and destroy our poverty and eat our food and kill each other. This is a form of human extinction to survival and progress events our ability to kill animals and nature as he doesn't when we need food without access for humanity's essential civilization would have been possible. Turn the alternative is reactionary. They essentialize humanity, so ignore social differences, which kill their ability to solve for environmental harms and leads to a genocidal eco-fascist politics. That's in 97 deep ecology offering with totalizing the evidence we the clips we have called the environment crisis. This we is fiction that secures the foundation of men and women develop and undeveloped countries which words so in the brain of the women must allow with a group such as fluent cosmos of corporate CPS CEOs deep ecology lacks and substance social theory obliterates the differences between human substituting the natural deep ecology lines us to reactionary implications of subject within itself and anti-modern deep ecology close to reactionary politics national socialists from Germany with blaming humanity rather than the distinct social versus deep ecology can only see the future as a recuperation past. Not only the AF axis is their internal links action to preserve something is the only way to prevent the hierarchy. The negative enables you to selectively choose what matters and what should wait go back to the counterpoint really quickly. Discrimination isn't an a priori issue. Our impacts mean that we turn this. So does the util card I just read. If they would say yes evidence in the counterpoint, it takes out their impact evidence because companies are not discriminating in the status quo. I'm sorry about that. Back to the K. Kaminsky 96 must not obscure the issue by characters in this type of case, the sacrifice of individuals for and abstract social instances out of question of some person having to bear the cost of some elusive overall social good by whom so the person who must bear the cost of the act we fail to sufficiently respect many of these separate persons who bear the cost of our inaction. By the way, that was the card that I read to the tag that I read before I went to the counterpoint, just to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Okay, so the counterplan implements contract employee reviews to ensure equal opportunity. Why would the AF's implementation of CCR solve this?
CCR.
Oh, I mean, no, sorry, CCVs. You make an argument at the bottom of the flow saying that CCVs solve
our argument is that we have a current contracting structure in the status quo for commercial crew contacts that is equitable, that does not discriminate, and that functions well in the status quo.
Do you read any evidence about this?
That's our 1AC evidence, which is written by the people themselves who participate in the contracts.
Which 1AC evidence?
The Musk evidence is from the director of SpaceX, and he talks about how it's a good system, the contracts are equitable, etc. You have not read evidence specific to NASA and how they allocate employment benefits. Now,
I know all companies right now have to have some equal opportunity standards. Does your evidence indicate that NASA engages in equal opportunity contract compliance reviews?
Well, unfortunately, you have not read evidence that they don't, which means that that's kind of your burden. I will answer that if you read evidence.
Does your K-alt let us have an alternative, or does your K-framework let us have an alternative?
Yeah.
Okay.
We just have to be able to weigh our AF against the K.
Okay, let's talk about topicality. The second piece of evidence you read says that in the case of space, vehicles constitute the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Why do you have a right to space?
Well, that's the next piece of evidence we've read. The Virginia evidence, which is from the Commonwealth of Virginia, so it's pretty qualified government definition, indicates that transportation infrastructure includes rail, transit, marine, aviation, space, and roadway projects, which means that space is also something we have a right to. In addition, so
your counter-interpretation allows us to develop anything in space as long as we use a vehicle to do so.
As long as it's transportation infrastructure, as our
So,
definition said.
and you define transportation infrastructure as vehicles.
We define that in the context of space, vehicles are actually considered roads. That's the Hudgens evidence. I know it sounds weird, but it actually does make sense in the context of space.
I don't really know the distinction between that then, because you're still going to justify the creation of any type of launch vehicle. Yeah.
I mean, there aren't that many types of launch vehicles, and they're all made in the same core way. There
Okay,
are probably
but
two
you
more
don't
apps
read
on that
any,
topic.
any
The
limiting
ISS
evidence
app and
about
the Moon app.
what launch vehicles are TI. You just say any vehicles.
Vehicles in the context of space are roads. That means the same argument is true for on the Earth, which is you could build any road anywhere. Yeah, you can build any road anywhere. That's transportation infrastructure.
Let's talk about inherency. Do you read any evidence that comes after late 2012?
That's actually the thing that this evidence indicates, is that is not important. You read evidence from a budget request, which Obama has sent to Congress.
We read evidence saying that private companies are funding your plan. Private companies are implementing the creation of these commercial
your
crew
evidence
vehicles.
indicates that this is kind of confusing, so I'm going to try to explain it. But the way that commercial crew contracts work is that they do it on a pay-for-performance basis. So they have paid some of the contracts
And
now,
what
and
evidence
those
do
are
you think
finishing up.
delineates your affirmative as separate from what private companies are doing right now?
I'm trying to explain it. Do you want me to explain it?
Actually, that's fine.
I'll explain it in another speech, I guess.
Prep.
57.
Oh, yeah, like the 1 AR stuff? Yeah. Yeah, do a flash drive. I have a flash drive. You highlighted your 1 AR cards too, right? It's not letting me use the flash drive. It's not letting me use any flash drive, so I might have to read it off my laptop. But I have like the highlighted versions.
God, these goldfish are so flavor blasted. Like you can taste the extra sugar.
Stop, Prep. I have 212 used for us.
748.
Can I, do you guys care what flash drive it's on? I'm gonna put it on ours.
Not really.
2 and
I kind of would prefer you put it on there.
It's not the best flash drive. I'm just gonna say.
So the only stuff that's going to be on the computer is the inherency stuff, because did that last night, didn't get to print it.
Humble brag. What was the time left on that? 748?
Everything else is on paper though.
That's no big deal.
So we'll start on the plutonium dised.
Of course we will.
Then we'll go to inherency.
And then what, sir?
Inherency.
Okay.
The partnerships advantage. And then the ISS advantage. And then the critique at the bottom. I can put my computer on here.
Yeah, of course.
Everyone's so nice in this space. It's always confusing for me.
This 2NC, I'm just being such an asshole. You're gonna be so relieved after this happens.
God, someone will escalate.
Wish there were more tables so you could flip some tables.
You could flip this table. Sperling's got that crazy strength.
No, not even a little bit. All right.
Let's do that.
Like uniqueness doesn't matter on this set. I'm not going for it. It turns the entirety of the case. Our last evidence indicates that all plutonium-powered space missions are going to fail inevitably. There's a linear risk to this set, which means that they get no access to the case because the plan will explode, which would destroy the credibility of the space industry. Means they access none of their arguments. The impact defense is the accidental launches. The impact's not accidental launches. It's space accidents. There is no 2AC answer to the fact that the affirmative will explode as a result of a nuclear failure, which takes out the whole AF. No new 1AR answers. You should have read our cards, not our tags. Go to the inherency debate. First, it's a voting issue. It's a stock issue. If the affirmative is not here, we win the debate. This is not an argument that proves the affirmative is unnecessary. It's a theoretical reason to reject the team. It's a resolutional burden. They have to defend a substantial increase, which is measured against the backdrop of the status quo. It also makes it impossible to get disad links to the affirmative because space is inevitable now. That's their cards. It also means that research becomes impossible because everyone is not going to write about the desirability of something that's already happening. All of their evidence is over a year old. Gut check here. Our evidence is from yesterday. They have two arguments here. First is the budget, which means that Obama has fully funded commercial crew in the status quo. That's Smith 411. NASA's budget includes commercial crew. NASA has hired SpaceX to deliver cargo to the ISS. That means that they don't get access to any of their affirmative, and they say that budget cuts are coming down, that the budget might not pass. Here's a framing issue. Even if there are budget cuts, they'll cut Earth science. Commercial crew will stay. That's Leone 49. As the NASA budget begins to appropriate the cut, NASA's planetary science division is expected to lose all the money. Certain things will be protected. NASA does not have to cut every program. They say that, and even if we don't win the budget stuff, they've conceded NASA is hiring through PPPs in the status quo. Our evidence cites multiple examples of commercial crew going to the ISS. Here's another company that's already doing it. Faust 422. The launch was a major success for orbital and NASA and provide launch services. The launch was commercial cargo and crews to the ISS. It's a historic day for spaceflight in America. This provides competition for ISS cargo services and go to partnerships. There's no impact, no decline of liberalism to cause war. The pinker evidence would vote negative because the structures that hegemony built are never going to go away. They have no reverse causal evidence or parallel evidence. Cites empirical examples that transition wars are crap, like the Anglo-American transition, which means they have no evidence why anyone would ever fight. There's no rational incentive to disrupt cooperation. That's their science diplomacy argument. Go to science diplomacy. First off, it never works because countries do not communicate with their scientists. There's a difference between heads of state and scientists, which means they can't access a scenario. They also have not read a specific internal link to extinction, which means you should be highly skeptical of their evidence. Also, science diplomacy is inevitable. Their second evidence indicates that other countries are cooperating now. Also, all the warrants on the previous flow prove that cooperation will never stop. Go to the critique. We'll let you weigh the 1AC, which takes out all their framework arguments. And here's the big question. This is not a critique of anthropocentrism. This is a critique of the delineation of a difference between humans and nature. We can still say that humans are the best animals in nature, but we are part of nature, and trying to delineate ourselves from civilization causes ecocide. Our dark mountain evidence indicates that it leads to the destruction of the natural environment, which is an independent impact, but also it says causes human extinction because we rely on natural products in order to sustain ourselves. It's also the impact, another impact is that it's the root of all hierarchies. Frank 9, culture and nature stands for a gender dualism of masculine and feminine dualities characterize Western thought. The grand chain of being is a chain of dominance. Such categories have been described as ethnocentric constructs. With the destruction between nature and society, these dichotomies, connections have allowed the hierarchical division of others under the guardianship of the law. Nature social hierarchies are based on an unchanging concept referred to as nature. Justifications of existing inequalities are based on the hierarchical order attributed to nature. Darwin's nature culture antithesis is used to justify the prevailing socioeconomic order. This dualism destroys meaning in the natural world and meaning in our lives, which justifies environmental exploitation. Ratner 11. Dualism had been built on the idea that nature has no intrinsic value to justify exploitation. When nature has no meaning, it's easy to conclude life has no meaning. The beliefs that nature has no meaning have perpetuated industrial technologies, pollutants like warming the concept that nature is nothing, made exploitation possible. Dualistic philosophy descended in nihilism. Dualism denies the possibility of finding meaning in nature. The view that life has no meaning is existential nihilism, which negates life, judging it to be pointless. They say the ontology is not first. Fine, it's not a critique of ontology. They say see the political, that does not apply. Frame all of their arguments about human management of nature good. Our argument is not that humans can't manage nature. It's that when we think of ourselves as separate from nature, that management won't work. Our alternative is a prerequisite to pragmatic solutions to environmental problems because it convinces people to care about the natural world because it starts to see us as part of it. Patterson 6. The challenge is to find a justification for why nature should be protected. Although nature in general is considered valuable, conservationists find that in practice they have to fight the same battles again and again to protect species. Humans and nature are seen as being in conflict with each other. This human versus nature dualism is unhelpful to social and environmental goals. Eastern views of life transcends dualism. This provides a bridge between ethics and the resolution of practical problems. Conservation requires we overcome dualism, which creates antagonism between conservationists and other people to achieve a better future for all. They say permutation. First off, our 1NC link is to infrastructure, creating a wall between the world that we consider natural and the world that we consider human, which means you can't get out of the link because it's a link to your plan text. Here's a link to going to space. Hannah Arendt, 1961. The conquest of space from a point outside of Earth to unhinge the planet itself is no accident or reserved to modern scientists. It's not a natural but a universal science journey into space with respect to Earth is far from triumphant. Conquer space through our ability to handle nature from outside the Earth. We act as though we have disposed of nature from the outside. And they say also the civilization link about the Pinker evidence proves that there is obviously a conception of what civilization is in the affirmative, which means they can't get out of the permutation. Also, they've conceded that we are able to solve the extinction, which means there's no net benefit to including the affirmative. Also, the question in natural ecosystems and cross-sex was pretty embarrassing. We are animals. We are part of ecosystems, and the fact that they consider us distinct causes ecocide because it distances us from the nature and makes it easier to destroy. They say data good. This is not responsive. The critique has no problems with data. Our evidence specifically cites data about the environment. Also, you have no data to prove all of your advantages, so this is a wash. They say anthro is inevitable. It's not an anthro critique, which means this is largely irrelevant. Also, it's possible to break down dualism. Google Evan. Have you ever asked someone, where is nature? Where is the environment? From the classroom, I asked these students repeated pointing to the window, what if we were to pick an apple and eat it? The apple is part of nature, right? Is nature now a part of you? Students begin to question dualism. They say that utilitarianism, we solve this. You have conceded the critique is able to resolve extinction through environmental destruction. Also, the util framework for who? You should include nature in your utilitarian calculations, which means you would vote negative. They say human technology is good. We do not preclude the development of technology. We believe that technology should be built in coherence with nature, and when you try to build infrastructural technologies while still assuming that humans are different from nature, those technologies will fail. Edwards 2. Infrastructures produces pictures that separate nature and society. Oh no, wrong Edwards card. Edwards 2. Infrastructures are fragile. Natural disasters can be seen as one vehicle for separating nature from infrastructure as control. Infrastructures fail because their developers approach nature as separable from society, and understanding that is a characteristic of modern life within infrastructure. They say that, get off the rock. We do not preclude the human technology, which means this doesn't apply. They say human control of nature is good. This is not true. We can be super good at technology. We just need to understand that we are part of nature when we do it. The most complex computer is still a part of nature because nature encompasses the entire world. Ralston 99. Nature is we're referring to everything. Nature is all that there is. Human and their activities will be included. Humans are generated within nature. They say animal equality is bad. We are not saying that you should put humans on the same ethical level as animals. We are saying that humans depend on the natural world, that we are a part of it to exist. Also, this card is illogical. There's no reason why we would end up killing humans because animals are equal. We would probably protect both of them equally. They say the alternative is eco-fascism. No links to all of their indicts of deep ecology, which the alternative clearly is not. Also, we would be able to make human life better by affirming our value within nature and allowing us to survive our transcendence of the dualism. They say util and action is good. We do not preclude any action to the environment. Our evidence indicates that we would make it better. Also, util, who are you going to include in calculations? Dualism leads to nukes. Mac 91. Dualism is the ability to experience separateness between itself and the world. Dualistic thinking is characterized by dichotomizing the dualist version of reality is provided useful for Western society to dominate the material world. Other people's nature, the philosophy led to the brink of nuclear war, the ultimate expression of self-division, and the extinction of the planet's life forms as human beings pursue their own well-being at the expense of other animals and plants.
What part of the 1AC recognizes that there is a difference between humans and animals, or human and nature?
Alright, so I have a few link arguments. The first is that you say that we built civilization. That's your Pinker card. The next argument is that natural ecosystems are distinct.
Go back a second. What is civilization?
Well, your partner defined it as when we created the state, civilization. Boom.
Why does that mean that we have intrinsically created a difference or a dichotomy between us and nature? Why can't we have a state that appreciates or recognizes that we are still a part of nature?
I might have started at the wrong point, because what we really do have here is a link to infrastructure, and that is what the plan does. Our Deusser evidence from the 1NC indicates that the modern project of infrastructuring the world to try to separate us from going to space or going inside the train car is an attempt to create a psychological distance from nature, because instead of seeing the natural world, we become insulated in our own little pods.
Why can't we do both? Why can't we get on a train and ride it to a really great hiking location and hike there and appreciate nature and be
Well, that's
with it.
an interesting argument, but your AF is space. We have a space link.
Okay, hiking on Mars. Why can't we take the shuttle up and go hiking on Mars? Why is that mutually exclusive with appreciating nature?
That does not, first off, that does not show us that we are part of nature. It shows
Why?
us that we were able to dominate nature because we were able to
How do you
get
get
outside
to,
of
how do you,
Earth.
Okay, so let's say like I love Mars. That's like my favorite part about the nature that I know I am. Like, how do I get there to appreciate it if I don't have the method to get there in the first place?
All right, this is also well proven by your Collins and Autino evidence, which speaks to space as a pool of infinite resources for us to have access to be able to ensure that we don't run out of the resources that we already blew on Earth. You are not going to be able to win that the 1AC was Mars is cool and we can go there. That's not what the
That's
AF
not
said.
my question. My question is, where do we make a clear dichotomy where we say that there is a distinction? Where do we say that we cannot appreciate nature because we are humans and the AF is about human-centric focus?
First, it's not necessarily whether you appreciate nature or not. It's whether you consider yourself separate from it.
Whatever you call it.
And if you consider yourself separate from it through the project of infrastructuring the world and going to space.
How do we make technology that is that fits under the world of the alternative in your link arguments? How do we develop that kind of
Sure. I didn't have time to read this card, but it speaks to the agricultural techniques in Bali, where the farmers consider themselves one with the natural ecosystems, and so they have farming crop patterns that
I'm
are
sure that works really well for farming and agricultural purposes. How does that work for getting to different places, for transporting ourselves?
Transportation in the context of the alternative would probably be something like what our Edwards evidence describes, that says when planners understand the connection between humankind and nature, they are able to plan in order to understand
what does that planning look like, and what does that infrastructure look like?
So it might look a little bit like...
Actually, I want to take prep for this, because this is pretty important. We had 847. All right, what infrastructure?
Infrastructure that is either based on the processes of natural ecosystems.
What does that mean? Can you give me an example?
Sure. I haven't seen the card, but there's an article out there that talks about building roads based on the way that ants construct their colonies, or infrastructure that understands that it is dependent on nature and is thus planned around. How do we know if it understands that it's dependent on nature? How can we make that assessment? Like, you've been dependent enough. We know that we are dependent on nature because our evidence says that we rely on any array of natural products to survive. We'll take a second approach.
Before the one in our
10 seconds.
738.
both teams just took prep before the one in our.
How is this even TOC?
Wait, I thought we were at camp.
Okay, ready?
Do you have an order?
Oh, the counterpoint. I thought
We're
I
really
said
at
that.
camp.
Sorry, I didn't.
The counter.
The counterpoint and the what?
Just the counterpoint.
Oh, okay.
Cities.
It's all on paper, right?
Yeah, all on paper.
At the top, the 1AC reads no evidence about contract compliance, which means you default to 1AC evidence. Every federal project requires you to have a contract DOT no date. The U.S. Federal USC requires the use of federal acquisition contract. And now, send there was evidence. There was a specific reason why the affirmative does not require a binding contract compliance contract because they support national security. Their North evidence talks about supporting space military access, and because that is related to national security, they are exempt from contract compliance. Burden 13. The following types of contract are exempt from the executive order contract involving national security. The executive order requires contract from discrimination. Also, ELSA says in crossing that they have the 1AC evidence about employee discrimination, but you should call for the 1AC after the round because they do not have anything specific to contract compliance, which is distinct from equal opportunity, which is not binding. That was in crossing. Now they say process counterpoints are illegitimate or counter-discrimination. The next should only run crossing counterpoints related to the topic and that are supported by the literature. First debated about contract compliance is key to policy education. World Bank in 12 public is Center for
for the monkeys learning about what working on lesson implementation project and choices and report trips about contract are implemented report choice and civic engagement is sporadic debate and specifically debate on contract lines is critical civic engagement Davies 12 contract lines the way to be more legitimate informed public debate contract legislation and would reduce within public civilian participation and bring different public services with the unnecessary different form are reasons that the bodies within the community reforms are democratic deficit one problem is worse services are private firms and confidential access to education okay. And the cost-benefit analysis of the plan versus counterplan is the only skill that we take away from debate. And for negative ground, process counterplans are important for negative ground, especially the TOC with crazy apps getting broken. 5, we increase affirmative education because it forces them to learn about their app and learn that NASA and security policies exclude and have a point discrimination. 6, hard debate is better debate. It forces strategic thinking, makes the app think about answers to the mechanism and education discussion. Now, our defense first, no grounds or limits offense, and the one single argument about certainty or immediacy being it takes away all offense for these counterplans. 2, perms check it and let them test whether condition has to be binding and enforce this debate, but evidence on this question. 3, checks it. So we only have so many problems the advocates. 4, competition checks it. If we win the counterplan disproves and competes with the app, then it's negative round and then proves the rest winning. And 5, their offense is all good strategies against the app are like functional picks and advantage counterplans. Next they say perm to the counterplan, but it's severing the counterplan and the counterplan.
Cross by reasonability.
Yeah. Cross by reasonability from T on the conditions counterplans as long as it's debatable. No offense on permit to the counterplan. It severs the counterplan and would allow for the amendments and changes to the plan of the term 2 contract. It's functional as they become the counterplan severs out immediacy and certainty of the plan. Each definition or reason to vote them down because they aren't topical or competition. Increases certainty immediate erosion. 5, increase requires the baseline immediate proceeding change. Investment in certain amount and definition investment requires investment and investment to be made and investment has to be immediate. CBO 91. The investment is found expenditure to produce an immediate person and special has to be certain immediate awards of versus 64. Special certain immediate in prison time and should mean certain immediate in summer 94. Should contact same must immediately affect as opposed to something, and each one of these terms prove the counterplan can be an example of plan because it's not topical. If a plan brings immediately shouldn't let them clarify the permutation makes the moving target justifies functional stuff and we see clarifications will kill negative strategy and our offense and our 1C FHO evidence that proves the counterplan isn't normally because there are no compliance standards that exist right now. Now they and that answers both their definitions. They say permutation to but the counterplan makes the outcome of CCR binding on the status of the contract is key. Our 1C evidence indicates that having that being prior is critical and status quo allows contract to escape contract compliance because if they show good fair efforts to act on in 13 contract FQ would objected and demonstrated performing a good faith every contract compliance and is done through advertising through newspaper minority organization and 2 the perm is intrinsic odds legitimate CCR project which is non the counterplan text and it allows them to add anything that's voting in the perm severs out immediacy and certainty. Next. They say our evidence is old, but they are not reading any evidence machines. You should default to our evidence. And they didn't read any specific evidence in the 1AC. And they say we don't solve the app, but we solve 100% of the case because they don't have a reason why their illegitimate constructs are critical. They say conditionality, but our interpretation links to their offense because there's tenuousness between the cap and the econ DA and our counter-interpretation. We should get 2 conditional applications, and that's good divorce and innovation. The affirmative allows them to debate whether they're good and not try new arguments. They lead to stale education. 2 negative flaws. It's key to check QEC out and 2 error persuasion always because the benefits of the space the translation topic is 2 towards the F3 rather than depth is impossible and they just read a more crappy incident and hope you drop the only chance to be fourth critical thinking 2 turns QEC ready force them to read their best often like perms on and multiple perms also link to this argument time to use enough because we reduction men read more often no strategy 2AC always has a strategic option. They say discourse is priority. It doesn't link to our arguments which are specific plan pluses. They see you to always but our obligation to the other always and 6 other concerns about misery matter nourishing one's responsibility on devotion self ethics responsibility for psychological. They say yes proves normal means, but they don't read a CAS argument, so this argument doesn't apply.
Okay, we had 8, 12, 18. All right, wow, we're almost done.
I mean 12.
Thanks.
Oh my gosh. Here's more evidence.
Oh, thanks.
If you want it.
Where's my jerk on?
have those.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah.
And you have like that outline for the one.
D time.
Oh my god, I still have that Diet Coke. I still got my ice candy Starbucks double shot with no ice candy. That's how I order it. Osama bin Laden is dead. Jason Collins is gay. Tim Tebow is on an NFL team. Life is good.
Jason Collins getting a shout out from Bill.
Bill Clinton just started tweeting too.
Bill Clinton has a Twitter?
He just got one. Colbert made it for him. Oh. I think it was announced to her.
That's great.
Clinton has access to it.
It's his now. You got to double check.
Bill Clinton has a Twitter.
I prefer him to Bill Clinton.
Isn't it like DJ Jeffy Clinton or something like that?
My God, Bill Nye. Boy, Bill Nye.
Isn't it so good?
I've been following him forever, but just lately I've noticed increasing the quality.
Makes me really follow. I love all the ones that just end with IDK. Have you ever thought about like how crazy black holes are? Just shaking my head, I don't know. Yeah.
I always read them in like a Sean Kennedy voice.
It might be Sean. You'd have to do some pretty aggressive persuasion for me to believe it wasn't Sean.
Very persuasive. Spur like you also with me.
At the TOC? Where were you?
Second.
Woo! Who was first your year?
Stephen Wheel. It's not fair. He won everything.
Yeah, he's pretty good at the data. Pretty good.
I got the last laugh.
Did you beat him?
Twice in the DT.
Oh, I thought you meant like at the TOC.
No, we lost him at the DOC in the semis.
That sucks. Was it when you beat him? Was it his senior year? Ooh, that is the last lap then. Was it in finals?
They found that icebreaker specific kit we were talking about.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool. Maybe they'll win.
Yeah, hopefully.
Do you think that Leah will vote for an Arctic geography K? So Head Royce went one off.
She's not judging that debate.
Oh, why not?
She coached Peace.
So who's
I don't know if they subbed in.
When did she coach bees?
2
Stanford?
years ago.
Oh, so a while ago.
But yeah. Yeah, she got out of judging because of that.
Was she trying to get out of it?
No, she filled out her preclusions, but they just messed up. And she obviously would have had another debate, but they noticed it too late. So.
What do y'all have left?
201.
When you grabbed all those cards, you also grabbed some of my flows.
Sorry.
Yes, we noticed. There should be in the stuff.
Okay, sweet. Thanks.
Just thought to say something about that.
I didn't want to interrupt their prep.
That was very polite.
I thought they could use more. What's the, I'm sorry, what was the frame I'm sorry again?
201.
So, Squirrels, we're reading this on 2 docs, so you want me to just condense it on one and then give it to you?
Sure, that's fine.
Alright.
Is this your laptop?
Yeah.
There you go.
I love you, Steven. I really do.
My one true debate love.
Such a man crush on him.
And you can pull this up and it
It's
has
just
like
a regular crush.
Here.
It does seem slightly redundant.
Yeah.
Okay. You grabbed the mouse, so I was just like, what?
It's also kind of funny because I was like, isn't she the two-way? They're pulling a chun.
Alright. No.
Wait, what are you doing in my document?
Okay. I condensed the cards
Close
into one
enough.
document.
Sweet.
I did you a favor.
Alright, thank you. Appreciate it. The order is going to be inherency, partnerships, ISS, scientific diplomacy, the water kind of dissad. Actually, put the plutonium dissad first, then the water dissad, then the counterplan, then the K.
Can you do that again? Sorry.
Okay, inherency. Actually, okay, I'm gonna move the water dissad again. Water dissad at the top. Sorry,
What did you set on top?
at the very top. Okay, inherency,
You're
partnerships, ISS, the other plutonium dissad, counterplan, and then the K. Yeah, sorry, it was the megacities dissad.
Yes.
Probably because I was paying attention.
Wait, do you have my
Do I have your?
where's my timer?
Oh yeah, I do have your timer. It's my bad.
Alright. We're good.
So wait, oh, I thought you said it for 6.
All right. Anybody not ready? Cool.
They didn't kick out of the waterway system properly. Considered only heating extinction is functionally inevitable because our water will inevitably become polluted. Megacities will expand, meaning it's only a question of whether we get off there or if they've conceded that we are key to solve colonization in the first place. More will be on the great K flow and the Hennessy flow. Commercial crew is a pay-for-performance partnership, which means that they get small contracts for competing certain milestones. Your evidence is about them competing for milestones that they received contracts for back in the mid-2000s doesn't apply to the stats quo. Evidence is the most meta on this issue. Says that the new contracts will not be allocated. Their functionally promises, but they have not been funded in these stats quo. That is the key distinction. Their evidence is all about budgetary claims, but they have not indicated that it has been funded in the first place. The key distinction is promises versus actual funding. Their evidence is theoretical but not definitive. They concede the 2AC card that the budget is an actual funding. The viability of the program is entirely dependent on funding from Congress fans and 12 the states blowing our practice to perform the first demonstration projects in 2015. However, this is all dependent on continued funding from Congress. In this actual initiative, we have attitudinal heresy. Congress doesn't want to fund it. That's what that was the Clayton and Clark evidence indicates that we still have certain partnerships.
It's not a voting issue.
It's not a voting issue, no, but there's only sufficient risk of the firm without partnerships, and then there's only a risk that we have the increased funding partnerships. Advantage the paper evidence indicates that we have the increased we have a decreased sexual violence, we have hegemony. The Brooks Wolf of the evidence says reverse causal claims that when we decrease the hegemony leads to a collapse of the world around it. No economic trade because countries try to compete for the hegemony because they have the economic benefits and rationale to achieve that extent with the first place, which means there turns to rationality arguments in the first place. It's just critical. They also concede to get off their rocket. The column 72 evidence here is as well as resource source or independent resource source impact indicates that they want to go to economic conflict in these stats. Well, ISIS advantage indicates that the government does cooperate with the scientists for the question of having the perception of having any contracts by 2015 on being able to get to the ISS in the first place, which our evidence indicates will collapse by 2015. That's necessary to lead to cooperation in the first place. The base of cooperation exists in the status quo because we have access to the ISS now. The distant plutonium descent empirically disproven link uniqueness evidence produced that we are developing plutonium. It's been successful in the past, obviously now, so when use non-successful technologies. In addition, they haven't specified which type of funding would be used for transformation to space in the status quo. It is still used by hard fuel in the status quo. Plutonium is only development to stage 3 that cost contracts in the status quo won't account for this counterplan. They don't account for our specific contracts. That is clarification made by the one and all, which means that they do not use the fundamental structure and that's the pay performance contracts that the plan uses, which means the huge solvency deficit because it doesn't lead to the same cost efficiency, doesn't solve anything because the rockets always goes over failures and NASA fundamentally funds it like they always do in the traditional procurement methods. That's the one see evidence indicates that whenever they fail, when that happens now, permutation due to the counterplan is not competitive, it agrees with the intent of the plan, should meet all the counterplan supports the belief that the plan ought to happen, proving the resolution is fundamentally true regardless of whether the condition is yes or no. It affirms the idea that the plan is a good idea. Our interpretation of a legitimate counterplan is one that competes sexually and functionally based on the necessary outcome of the plan. You can get things like counterplans which are alternative factors. You can't get cheater counterplans that jack the entirety of our 1C while using the USFG. They have conceded our definition resolved is not certain. That is the only conceded definition in the round, which means that the implementation of the counterplan is functionally competitive. The counterplan is not competitive with the affirmed. They say increases in certain Sylvie at all. The number of exceedances always needs to be considered together. Increased number of exceedances do not necessarily mean the measure has an impact, but they say investment substantial loads do not necessarily implicate immediate in the first place because it's a question of context. It should certain isn't mandatory. How to find the difference between shared and legal significance. Well, mandatory is also admission. The immediacy argument applies now. Conditionality is bad. At least we would justify that they get things like process counterplans. We can get the test of competition. The first place indicates their functional negative strategic ability. There's negative flexibility, but they cannot be conditional. They have to be dispositional in the first place. That is necessary because they still get negative flexibility. However, we access stress to you and times to you, even if these are inevitable. It's a question of not justifying a bad thing. We have the access to internal education because even if it's necessary to a secret credibility, it's necessary to depth, which is a prerequisite of breadth in the first place. We access decision making through education, and we access education through decision making because it's the only rational way we can actively test all the options in the first place.
Clarify that the counter-interpretation is one conditional advocacy.
The counter-interpretation is one conditional advocacy made in the UAC, which solved all the breadth claims. Now the K-proper extinction instead of all say handle the technology stuff at the bottom. The Day evidence in the UAC indicates they can't possibly get the technology because it's necessary to exploit the binary in the first place. Have the binary in the first place, which is necessary to create the technology required for colonization. Means we turn all their functional impacts, value, life, and answer this because value to life is functionally inevitably because there's inevitably enjoyment within life. It's between we have a prerequisite because we have to have life first in order to have value. Life root cause you should default the specificity of internal incomes. They indicate so we have a most specific scenarios. They do not include the root cause here. They do not reify hierarchies. Obviously, it's inevitably do things like capitalism in the first place. Don't spill over them to the alternative because other doesn't change the mentality of other countries. Floating picks are reason rejected this chain because they jack you of the one to see now. We send the permutation to both. The permutation do both would allow for the it was not obviously not in severance or intrinsic because they would still be the plan and the alternative. The alternative just to reject the representations of the one to see, which indicates not functionally textually competitive either because we'd be able to refocus our representations on the plan which doesn't and which answers all the links.
If they can kick their reps on Conda, then we can kick our.
If they can kick their reps on Conda, that's the reason why we can kick our reps to no civilization link because it's a question of other people, other animals in the natural systems that have civilizations with infrastructure to solve. And if it's embedded, that's the reason why they don't have link uniqueness on the critique and they can't solve it. It's embedded in our space travel infrastructure, which they've indicated is functionally inevitable. Space is not different.
There's no way that their space links don't apply because
space links don't apply because they assume that we don't get a space appreciated.
Was that last sentence?
The space links don't apply because they don't assume that we go to space to appreciate it.
Okay. What was the time for
7:38?
7:38.
weird. My timer ended.
I paused it so it would do that.
Trying to make me look like an idiot, Lanning. It's been going on for too long. Wait, are we missing Elsa?
She went to the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
Your flight's at 5 or
No. We could leave and just say or bring you back.
We gave him a 5-hour energy for the first time yesterday.
Switch lives?
It's like it needs like 1 hour of energy.
I judged Jeff Betts
Is it
when he was first delving into 5-hour energies. And he chugged one right before the 2 and 9. And I swear to Jesus,
You always
sweet,
live up
sweet
there,
Jesus,
yeah?
it was the craziest 2 and I've ever seen. He was like jumping around, like going faster than he's ever gone before. Just like.
Yesterday I was really sleepy and Carly was trolling me really hard. And so I just like started kind of like twitching and shaking and she's like, what are you doing? It's like sometimes when I get scared I just gyrate. I like lost.
Okay, counterplan and the K. It's the condo debate. The critique has an overview. All judges feeling ready to go.
Couple seconds.
Yeah. We good?
Just me.
Sweet. Several concessions mean they cannot go for conditionality. They've conceded on the other theory debate. Harder debate is better because it forces us to work harder, which means and become better critical thinkers. years, which means that if we make debate harder, you vote negative. Also, ideological flexibility is key to learn about multiple types of education. They mean that teams only go for what they're good at. I need to learn about some counterplans and not just go for and throw every single round. And reasonability from the topicality flow means you should err negative on the question. And also, they say dispositionality solves. You are shifting your counter-interpretation from dispositionality to one conditional advocacy, which independently means you should not vote for them because I have no idea what we're supposed to do here. But dispositionality kills logic because it allows them to stick with the counterplan. No policymaker would ever have to do that. And one conditionality links all of our offense because we can't try flexibility, which is key to a breadth of education. They've conceded that depth is impossible because teams just read bad answers and hope that we drop them, which means there's only a chance that a breadth of education is better. They have no warrant as to why depth is good, and the 1 AR is incredibly shallow in this part of the debate. Strategy and times are inevitable because we could have read more T-sets or T options. Also, there's no in-round abuse. We set up a standard, the 1 AR to prove it, and they did, and we also solved breadth because we lead to the breadth of education on the arguments, which means that their education standard doesn't apply. Decision-making we solve by forcing them to make decisions. There's also no explanation of how they access this. Don't vote on it. Go to the critique. If extinction is truly inevitable, you should vote negative. They conceded that the dualism between nature and humanity leads to the dualism between masculine, feminine, and the other races of the world. They have conceded a hierarchical violence impact of racism and gendered violence as a result of viewing the nature as feminine and the civilization as the masculine domination. They must prove that we should get off the rock in a society where we are exploiting everyone, leading to racism and gendered violence. They've conceded the card on the counterplan that says you have an infinite ethical obligation to the other, which means that comes before extinction. It means that you should prioritize the destruction of the other, whether they be non-human, racialized, or gendered. They have conceded this impact. We also have our vital life debate, which is another independent impact, and since both sides are winning extinction, that's a tiebreaker. They've conceded the eco side as a result of the dualism because it creates distance from nature and makes it easier to destroy it. We are dependent on these resources to keep us alive, which means that once we destroy all of nature, there is nothing to sustain us, and we all die. This turns the case. They've considered that the way we go into space matters. If we view space as an infinite pool of resources, the way their Collins and Autino evidence indicates, eventually we will exploit it all and die off the rock or on the rock. Go to the critique proper. They say extinction is inevitable. First off, the alternative would probably solve water contamination. They've conceded by sweeping evidence that we resolve the majority of environmental destruction by bringing people closer to nature and seeing that they are part of it. Our Patterson evidence on the pragmatism debate is phenomenal. They create a framework for pragmatists and environmental ethicists to work together on cooperative policies because people see that we are part of nature, so there are no longer the tree huggers and the non-tree huggers. Everyone is part of nature, so everyone cares. We also outweigh because of the racism and gendered violence impact that was conceded. They say technology is key to solve the binary. There's no warrant to this argument in the 1 AR, and honestly no warrant to a lot of 1 AR arguments, which means that 2 AR explanation is crap. They have 1 minute on this, and I was like half my 2 NC, and any rest that there was a link means you vote negative because technology can be maybe productively used to solve the binary, but we are winning that they don't use it productively. They say value to life inevitable. There's no warrant to this. Also, they have conceded our value to nature impact. When you view it as a pool of resources, it makes it easier to exploit and also destroys the value of non-human things. They say life first is fine, but life first includes other forms of life. Also, it means they've conceded our extinction impact. They say they have specific internal links, but your internal infrastructure does not get you out of the link. Our evidence indicates that it is an attempt to separate us from nature. They say we don't spill over to other countries. We don't need to. Our evidence is about educational settings being critical to challenge dualism. They've also conceded that just asking the question is able to destroy the dualism and solve this. Also, they say floating pick is not a floating pick. It requires a rejecting of the project of infrastructuring the world to make us separate from it. They have several links and new arguments will justify a new link card. Let's see if I have time to get there, but the permutation will not matter. There are no representations don't matter arguments in the 2AC, and there's no warrants to the reps arguments in the 1AR, which means that the way they have represented the 1AC matters. Our evidence indicates that the way we frame our relationship to nature shapes the way we do policies about nature, which means the question between appreciating the space, the nature of space, and exploiting the nature of space is a question of how we represent it, which is conceded. Our link arguments are simple. First, infrastructure is a project trying to separate us from the world, which means that we will always make it easier to destroy it. Our rent evidence is phenomenal that space is a project of trying to get outside of the world so we are able to see it, master it, and control it. No answer to the space link besides we appreciate nature, but it's clear that they don't. Their pinker evidence talks about the triumph of civilization over the natural world, which reifies the dichotomy, and they have no arguments as to why civilization is different from nature. The argument about natural ecosystems in cross-sex is also conceded that they see ecosystems as separate from us, which makes it easier to destroy them because we don't view plants and animals as including the human animal. Also, we did not kick our reps. The 1NC was consistent. They have no explanation of what the contradiction is. Our impact was about why it would be bad to destroy water supplies. I don't understand how that's inconsistent. Didn't have time.
We had 201. mechanisms that control the fact that conflict happens in the first place and the reasons why there are extinction level impacts in the first place. These countries also contribute to environmental degradation, which is another reason why the alternative cannot solve this, and again, their technological quick fixes cannot solve it, and the only way to resolve any of the impacts in this debate is to get off the rock. Now, extinction is inevitable on the Earth. This is a conceded argument from the disability blog. Never answer. Don't evaluate his new 2 spins on this, because this was a diss that they did not even kick out of. You should have some sympathy here. Their G&G evidence on the diss that says, quote, that the water cycle is one of the most important resources for life on Earth and is needed for food production and human survival, and that there are things that are trading off with that, and the status quo, that is their link evidence, which means that they cannot resolve that because they don't dismantle things like HSR, etc., which all are contributing to it. Now, additionally, the evidence that I read that indicates that agriculture always causes runoff and water pollution means that this is a terminal impact that is going to happen no matter what, because they can't solve for it, because agriculture always is going to happen. They can't solve for other countries using agriculture in an unsustainable way, which means that they cannot get technology that would solve this. Now, the plan solves commercial crew allows us to develop new ways of survival in space and live on new planets with new forms of nature. This is an extinction. Dispatch the alternative. While Sprouse is able to articulate some interesting explanations about technology could solve infrastructure under the alternative, his examples are ground-based, and so are all of his links. This is a warrant for why we can never use our understanding of nature to build technology that gets us started. Functionally, the reason why the alternative can't solve is because we link to the K. Surprise him, conceding that we link to the K, and I'm going for impact turns here. All of his arguments as to why they could possibly build technology assume that there isn't a link to the K, which means that the fundamental reason that as he's articulated it as to why we would go into space in the first place is fundamentally because of this binary and because of the fact that we see ourselves as distinct from nature, which means that the alternative could not resolve this, because the reason that you build the technology is fundamentally flawed. Now, there isn't a time frame differential of who solves extinction quicker, because environmental extinction because the environmental extinction impact is to the K is the thing that triggers our move from Earth to space. It's just a question of if you would feel more comfortable with the idea of trying to fix all the problems on Earth or getting the chance to start over. There's also no reason that this has to be a human-centered move. Noah's Ark proves that we would bring a lot of other things with us when we started a new life. There's zero chance that the people or nature animals will survive in the world of the alternative, but there's at least some hope that we would survive if you voted for him. Now, they say the dualism arguments at the top of way these against our impacts. First of all, extinction is a controlling impact, which means that you have to have life in order to have things like binaries to exist in the first place, which means that we control the only extinction level impacts. Sprouse was really pretty good in the 2NR on impacting these arguments, but less good on the extinction level impacts and his internal links to that. And then the reason why we turn their access to that impact I just explained above. Now, because their impact is the triggering for why we would get off the rock in the first place. Now, you have to have life in the first place to be able to either have an economy or not have an economy, which takes out any risk of their impact, because we control the only extinction level scenario that you can definitively resolve at the end of the round. By voting affirmative. Additionally, all of their infinite obligation to the other arguments assume that there is a value to life. Higgins sees a pretty damning argument that there is that the value of life is inevitable, which means that we have to try to preserve life in the first place, to preserve whatever life we can possibly have. Additionally, they say value of life is a priority. No, it's not, because you have to have life that is a priority. I know I'm getting pretty repetitive here, but this is an argument that he has not answered. Now, you can also cross by the infrastructure inevitable globally argument to this argument, because it means that the binaries will always be perpetuated by other countries, etc., which means that we cannot hope to solve that. The only thing that we can hope to solve is to get off the rock and have a more progressive form of how we understand nature and understand ourselves. If we are able to get off the rock, it is possible at least that we would be able to do things better on Mars, to get a second chance and go around again and do things without creating that kind of binary, to embrace Mars as something that is part of us instead of something that is different from us, and that is only possible under the world of the affirmative. Now, they say that it turns the case because the way we go to space matters. It does not turn the case. We control only the only impact that turns theirs, because the way that we go to space is not flawed. They've not contested our internal link change, which is just a question of if we can't get to space. They've conceded solvency, which means we can't, which means it's only a question of if getting to space and starting over is better than trying to fix the fundamentally flawed problems with the Earth. That there is a very negligible risk that the alternative can actually resolve. Now, they say any risk of a link means you vote negative. I'm impact turning this, which means that obviously if you think that our impact outweighs, then you should vote affirmative. Now, we do use tech productively in the status quo. All of our 1AC authors indicate that our technology is feasible and able to get us off the Earth. Coholland and Martino indicate that we can do it. There's nothing mutually exclusive about going into space to go to Mars and get a new width and then get off the rock, because of the things that we have done in the past that are bad, and because of the things we've done in the past are bad, and trying to at the same time embrace nature as a part of us. Now, they say value to nature and value to life. This is all answered by the fact that extinction is inevitable in the status quo. You should be very skeptical of his arguments about why the alternative solves this, because it was not answered in the block. Additionally, they don't resolve it because their evidence is talking about things like agriculture farms in Bali and not being able to get out the rock, which means that they don't solve. Now, they say that they don't need to spill over. You don't have an impact claim if you can't spill over. I'm not going for the permutation. It's just a test of competition. They can't get any severance voting issue on this. Additionally, there's no reverse voting issue on conditionality. Extinction outweighs.